Money can buy happiness. Money is an unavoidable part of life that impacts each and every way we experience the world. It influences everything from basic survival to the opportunities available to us. Money represents freedom, success, and the ability to chase our dreams, and without it, it becomes a source of anxiety and pressure that can negatively impact our quality of life. The age-old question, does money buy happiness, is often oversimplified, and society tends to ignore the undeniable influence that money has on our well-being. But to understand the role that money plays in our pursuit of happiness, we must consider the complex relationship between financial security and life satisfaction. Ultimately, happiness can't exist entirely apart from something that is embedded so deeply into modern life. And this age-old question must be answered considering the societal structure in which we live. Now picture this. A young father living in Honduras works long hours of manual labor, barely earning enough to provide for his family. He feels that his children's potential is being wasted and understands that this cycle of poverty can't be broken in his home country. One evening, he gathers his family to inform them of a difficult decision that must be made for their future. They must leave behind all that they know to embark on a perilous journey to the United States. He makes this decision considering that the financial opportunity that the U.S. provides will finally allow them to pursue happiness. This father's story is not unique. Each year, millions of people from countries such as Honduras, Venezuela, and Mexico choose to make a dangerous journey to the United States, driven by a hope for a better life. It's estimated that 3.3 million migrants joined the U.S. population just this year, with many fleeing poverty in search of opportunity. The common motivator of these immigrants is simple. It's money. The risks they face are immense, as many of these people must travel rough terrain, cross rivers, and even avoid human traffickers on their journey to a better life. They often sleep in overcrowded shelters and go without food and water. But choosing to make this journey isn't some reckless decision. Instead, it's a gamble they must take to ever have a chance for them and the generations after them to escape financial insecurity. The United States represents more than just a place to live for these immigrants. It represents the promise of financial opportunity. With a minimum wage job in the United States providing enough income in a week to last them months in their home countries, the goal of these people becomes apparent. After leaving behind their communities, family members, and cultures, the struggle doesn't simply end after crossing the border. Immigrants must adjust to the new country, learn new languages, find jobs, and face a plethora of cultural barriers. Through this sacrifice and these stories, the connection between money and happiness becomes undeniable. Struggles like these wouldn't be faced on the off chance that money was able to buy happiness, and without certainty of this being the case, there'd be no reason to embark on such a dangerous journey. On the other hand, those remaining in poverty-ridden countries are shown to have greater levels of dissatisfaction and anxiety. When considering these things, it becomes clear why so many people are willing to uproot their lives in the pursuit of financial opportunity. In this context, money serves as a tool to create hope and provides a foundation on which people are able to build happiness for themselves and generations to come. Ultimately, this global struggle for financial security and the risk that millions choose to face each year emphasizes the profound impact that money has on happiness. As the cost of living and inflation rises, poor finances continue to contribute to the mental health crisis we see plaguing societies across the globe. The lack of a stable income is tied to marital struggles and dysfunctional family dynamics, which contributes greatly to the cause of many mental health issues. On the other hand, those with an abundance of money are able to lead a fulfilling life. Financial security relieves worries regarding finances, allowing for peace of mind and opening doors to alleviate struggles. With money comes access to better health care, nutrition, and mental health support, equipping individuals to take better care of themselves and those around them, while alleviating struggles and taking better care of oneself and others can lead to happiness, this isn't all that money has to offer. It's not just about fulfilling basic needs. Money has the power to increase long-term life satisfaction, offering opportunities for personal growth, generosity, and pursuing passions. In the 1980s, Chris Gardner found himself in poverty. As a single father and struggling salesman, Chris aspired to become financially stable and find happiness for him and his son. His pursuit of happiness would be accomplished through getting a job at a brokerage firm, but his financial situation made it nearly impossible to achieve this goal. His story was then recognized after publishing an autobiography titled The Pursuit of Happiness, which outlines his story of overcoming homelessness to become a stockbroker. His book was then made into a blockbuster film starring Will Smith and his son Jaden after the story moved many and highlighted money's ability to buy happiness. In Chris Gardner's pursuit of happiness, his financial situation hindered his ability to get a job for which he was well qualified. The time and effort needed for Chris to complete his stock brokerage training program was interfered with by the struggle to survive with his son. They often stayed in homeless shelters, but were even forced to sleep on the bathroom floors of subway stations. Others who competed for the same position faced little to no issue completing their program. Although they were not nearly as determined as Chris, life's challenges were more pertinent in his dire financial situation, but through suffering and determination, Chris achieved his goal of becoming employed at a prestigious brokerage firm. Through this job, and more importantly, the income that came with it, Chris and his son felt a sense of relief. This job gave them the money they needed, not only to fulfill their physiological needs, but also to be happy. The outcome of Chris's story highlights financial resources' abilities to open up opportunities, as in contrast to the other brokers, Chris struggled to find rides to necessary meetings, or even find a light source to be able to study for his brokerage program. Chris Gardner's story uses poverty to illustrate the idea that a lack of finances bring about negative feelings and struggle-ridden situations. By contrast, gaining more is what brought Chris happiness. But what about those who are a part of the middle class? Their finances are good enough to be comfortable and sustain their lives, which leads many to believe that that amount of money is all that is needed. While this is true to an extent, money still has more to offer. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a psychological theory which organizes human needs using a pyramid. At the base of the pyramid are physiological needs, such as food, water, and shelter, followed by the needs of safety and security. The top of the pyramid includes higher level necessities for humans, such as the needs of belonging, self-esteem, and self-actualization. These needs are essential to fulfilling humans' deeper desires regarding their purpose and life satisfaction, but tend to be neglected without adequate financial resources. I think I'll just cut it there. So.
So Cameron, I appreciate how you presented a pretty good case for how money is important to basic happiness. I'm curious what you would say about what are some dangers of pursuing money as a source of happiness?
I guess your relationship with money is what can be dangerous, because you have to have the correct expectations for what money will actually bring you, and then you also have to make sure, just especially as Christians, not to grow to love money, not to put it over things that will make you more happy. For example, your family, but also money can be used to help your family. But I think ultimately you just have to be very conscious and aware of how much you're pursuing money, and then how much you're pursuing other things, or pursuing a life that is Christ-like, you know?
I appreciate that, because it does seem like a real danger. I think most guys who leave their families, frequently work becomes the source of pursuing happiness for their family, but then work kind of takes over, and then they don't really care about their families after a while. It becomes a really kind of mysterious danger. I guess the other question two other questions real quickly. Short-term missionaries to Africa and South America even frequently go over there, and they're like, these people are so happy. Like, I don't think we have that many happy people in America. And yet the thing that they're amazed by is the happiness with poverty. I'm curious how you would kind of speak to that reality.
I think that really has everything to do with their culture and their just society that they grew up in. I mean, they were born into how they're living, and I think that's how humans have been living for thousands of years, you know, until we got where we are now with AC and things like that. So I think the fact that we live in a society where money is essential to life, I think that changes the whole perspective, because these people, they don't need money. They hunt for food. We have to purchase food. So I think it's a little different.
I appreciate that. And I do think, you know, from the Bible, it does say, you know, that shelter, clothing, and food are basic needs that if you don't have it, like, yeah, you're in serious dire need. You're not going to find basic happiness without those three things. And so, but I think there is the question becomes more complicated, as you said, for middle class people who already have those needs kind of taken care of, and they're kind of taking care of other needs. Which brings me to my last question, like, surely lack of money can produce mental health issues, but it is interesting to me that the U.S. has more mental health issues than any other country, and we're also the wealthiest country. I'm curious kind of how you would respond to that kind of question.
I guess, I don't know how correct this is. I didn't really do research on it. But you mentioned how people in Africa who are technically in poverty, how they're able to find joy just through the simplicity of life. I think we've grown to be so, I mean, we just overconsume. I think there's so many factors that can contribute to our mental illnesses besides the fact that we're rich as a country, that I don't know how good of a measurement that is.
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Cameron, you have a part in your paper where you talk about money's ability to allow us to be generous. Tell us a little bit about your research in that area.
Okay, so I researched how pro-social spending pretty much is the ideal way to spend your money in order to buy happiness, which I thought that was really interesting because scientists discovered, or they recommended that you spend 10% monthly or annually or however you want to do it on pro-social spending or generosity. And I think that spending this way helps kind of eliminate the idea that the middle class is capped almost. Like the middle class can only spend so much money, because if they were able to have more to provide for others, then it would fulfill them in a deeper sense.
I have a question. So I'm thinking about if your thesis statement is money can buy happiness, it seems like that should be quantified in some way. how do you measure happiness?
Matthew Killingsworth, I did research on a study that he conducted, and he measured it. He had 34,000 volunteers who were all given notifications on their phone throughout the day randomly, and they were given a survey analyzing their life satisfaction, and then I think also they just rated how happy they were or rated the amount of positive and negative emotions they were feeling. And through that, he was able to get experience samples and then chart it on a graph. And he was able to see that as income increases, so does happiness. And then also negative feelings will continue to deplete.
Okay, so just following up with that, you mentioned the word satisfaction, and the other word you said there. You're talking about how to measure it. That's good. How do you define happiness? I mean, it seems like we also need to be able to differentiate happiness between other positive emotions. So what's the thing that differentiates that between other positive feelings like satisfaction?
I think a lot of people like to say that happiness is like a short-term emotion, but I would say the feeling of being happy I think that comes from fulfilling our desires and needs. I think if you have a need that's fulfilled, you're going to feel more happy, and same thing with the desire. And I think Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of shows that finances can be used to not only achieve your basic needs, but also they can be used as a resource to fulfill deeper desires and things of that nature.
Go ahead.
Sorry. In your topic, Mr. Davis mentioned this already, but as we all study Scripture and reflect on it in our own lives, it's amazing to me how much Scripture talks about money. Money, possessions, work, all of that. Just wondered, as you did your research, because there's a wrestle in Scripture between needing to work hard to provide for the things like Mr. Davis said, but also not loving money as becoming a root of evil, as the word tells us. I just wondered, as part of your research, any scriptures that really jumped out at you, or any passages that you would take with you or advise us to take with us as we consider what you've taught us today?
I would say Ecclesiastes 5:19, I think, is the correct verse. I don't have it memorized, but it outlines, Ecclesiastes is all about the vanity of possessions and money, but in Ecclesiastes 5:19, I think God outlines that money or possessions and things of that nature are a gift from Him, and there's something that we're supposed to receive it as a blessing and enjoy it. So I think if somebody is blessed with money, for them to say that it can't buy them happiness when God is wanting them to find joy through what He's blessed them with, I think that's probably just the best verse.
Great job.
So, talking about all of this, I'm curious, how does this relate to your life, and what does this argument do for you in the future?
Well, something I didn't go over in my paper was how a lack of finances can affect family dynamics, marriages, and child development. And I really want to have a family. And I think all three of those aspects, I think it's essential that for later in my life that I'm able to provide for my family and take care of them. And I also think just in my own life growing up, financial worries and stress is definitely something that affects children. And I think it's maybe through that I was able to, come up with my topic idea. But
Hi, let's see. So I didn't see the movie Pursuit of Happiness, and I can't remember if you mentioned it just now. Did he achieve his dreams?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you talked about his path and how difficult it was, and then you mentioned others. Their path was not as difficult to become brokers. Do you think that maybe if the path is more difficult or there are more struggles along the way, happiness? Do you think Chris was happier with the end result than maybe some of the people it's hard? Do you think the struggle impacts happiness?
I think it 100% impacts happiness. I think we can see that people who grew up in very rich households, I think they're less appreciative of what money can bring them. And then those who grow up in poverty, for example, they really, like, we see all these rags to riches stories. Like, it impacts those people the most.
I have a follow-up to that. I mean, the thing I was sitting here thinking about, Cameron, is just that it seems like in Scripture, there's a high value placed on the concept of suffering. I mean, I'm thinking the passage that comes to my mind is, in James, count it all joy, my brothers, when you encounter trials of various kinds. So, I mean, it's kind of celebrates this idea of experiencing trials and difficulty. It seems like that was the Beatitudes, blessed are the meek. Those sorts of verses all throughout the Beatitudes. It seems like suffering is a value or a circumstance that's lifted up. How does that fit in with your thesis, the idea of the suffering that Christ seems to say, hey, embrace this in Scripture? How does that fit with your topic? How do you reconcile those two things?
Could you define reconcile?
How do you make those two ideas that money can buy happiness and Christ tells us to value lives of suffering? How do you make those two things make sense in the same world?
Well, I think they can be separate. I think money can buy you happiness while you go through trials that God puts into your life. And I think if you're able to achieve the money it takes to be very comfortable, then I think maybe God doesn't see suffering as necessary for you as an individual. I think it's a very personal journey, and it really just has to do with what God thinks fits for you. But I think I don't really know, to be honest.
Me either, kind of.
And I don't have a question, but I do have a statement. So to follow up with what Mr. Drotti said about struggling and happiness, you kind of started out this year with a little bit of struggle. You should be very happy with yourself, Cam. I'm very proud of you. You did a good job today.
Thanks, Miss Janie.